Topic 4, the leader as an individual. So objectives are describe the importance of self-awareness and how to recognize your blind spots, identify major personality dimensions influence leadership, how to influence the leadership and relationships with organizations, summarize the idea of instructional, instrumental, and even and end values, including the ways in which values guide thoughts and behaviors. Explain attributions and perception and how these dynamic affect the leader-follower relationship. Outline individual differences in cognitive style and pay special attention to the qualities you have that contribute to strong leadership. And broaden your own thinking style to expand leadership potential. Explain how to lead and work with people with varied personality traits. Self-awareness. Being conscious of the internal aspects of one's nature, such as personality traits, emotions, values, attitude, perceptions, and appreciating how your patterns affect other people. Everything starts with self-awareness as a leader. This is ground zero, because if you're not correct or you're not right in what it is you're doing, it's hard to be deal with somebody else to try to help them get right. Importance of self-awareness. Effective leaders know who they are and what they stand for. Allow people to know what to expect from them. People acquire self-reflection to avoid blind spots that limit effectiveness and career success. So effective leaders, they do know who they are. They're aware who they are. They know their strengths and they know their weaknesses. And they allow people to get to know them. And when people get to know you, they get to respect you. Yes, they know you as a leader, but if they get to know you as a person too, you can get more out of them and you can build closer bonds. People require self-reflection to avoid blind spots. You have to have self-reflection so that you can avoid the blind spots. Basically, if I know who I am and what I am, and I know my capabilities and stuff, the blind spots I'm aware of. It's when people refuse to acknowledge who they are and what their capabilities are, they have blind spots, and they're pretty evident for others to see. So blind spots. Characteristics or habits that people are not aware of or don't realize as problems, but which limit their effectiveness and hinder their career success. This is basically when people don't recognize that everybody should know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and everybody's got them. The difference is some leaders will recognize what theirs are, and others will not. I've seen this actually stymie careers, bring careers to a halt, or end some careers because people have blind spots. And there's one thing too, and when they do get called out about the blind spots, they don't want to address them because they don't believe they have them. And let me tell you something, nobody changes without self-awareness. So that means this. If you tell me that I've done something wrong, but if I don't believe that I did it wrong and stuff, that's not self-awareness. And guess what I won't do? I won't change. Trust. Gallup research suggests that only 1 in 10 people possess the characteristics that great leaders exhibit, which include traits and behaviors necessary for building relationships based on trust and openness. So there are a lot of leaders out here in the world, and there are a lot of bad leaders out here in the world. Some who don't know they're bad and some who do and don't care. But when it comes to having good leadership, one of the things that you will notice, there's a level of trust that they have between the leader and the people that follows him or her. Personality, set of unseen characteristics and processes that underlie a relatively stable pattern of behavior in response to ideas, objectives, people, environment. I've always heard in management, in leadership, we don't manage people, we manage personalities. And it's true. If you see someone who has a certain personality, you will see others who's got that type. Most likely the problems that you're dealing with that type of personality with one person, you may deal with some of those with other people who have similar personalities. Big five personality dimensions. Okay, five general dimensions that describe personality. Extroversion, for extroverts, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. Extroversion. So when we look at extroversion, the degree to which a person is outgoing, socially uh, talkative, and comfortable meeting and talking to new people. It includes the characteristic of dominance, likes to be in control and influence others. Self-confidence, seeks positions of authority. So if you think of this, these are the type of people that you would see be like sales reps, people who want to be leaders, people who are sometimes can be a little too pushy. They're extroverts. Now, granted, and it can be good to be one because it does allow you to do certain things, be outgoing, sociable, and talkative. And it can be bad when you do too much of it. That's when you have a tendency to be overbearing, too pushy, and talk too much. But they don't lack self-confidence. And even sometimes when maybe they should not be so confident, they don't lack it. And a lot of times you will see them seek positions of authority. Agreeableness, degree to which a person is able to get along with others by being good-natured, cooperative, forgiving, compassionate, understanding, and trusting. Warm, approachable, more agreeable people are more likely to get and keep jobs. Overly agreeable people tend to be promoted less and earn less. So people do like agreeable folks, people who can get along, people who can nurture and be and make others get along. What you don't like is for somebody to be overly agreeable because now you become a yes person or whatever else. So for instance, if I ask you, I'm your boss and I ask you, what do you think about this? Does this really go together? And you're like, yes, it goes together. The only reason you said yes is because I asked the question because I thought so versus telling me it doesn't. So a lot of times that'll be, yes, people are viewed to be as being weak by leaders when they look at him, because any good leader does not want yes people around them, people who are overly agreeable. They want people who are realistic and will tell them the truth so they can make good decisions. Conscientious, to degree to which a person is responsible, dependable, persistent, and achievement oriented. Focus on a few goals, more important than extroversion for effective leadership. So this means that people, they do things and they understand what they do, why they do it. And they're dependable and they are reliable and they are well into, as a matter of fact, because they are conscientious, it'll keep them from doing some things that they feel may be wrong. Emotional stability, degree to which a person is well adjusted, calm, and secure. Emotionally stable leader can handle stress, criticism well, and does not take mistakes or failures personally. Develop positive relationships, improve relationships. Leaders with low degree of emotional stability can become tense, anxious, and depressed. So this is really good for people who, particularly if they're in high stress type situations, careers, where you see things like emergency room workers, doctor emergency room, police officers, firemen, law enforcement, military. Emotional stability is crucial in some of those types because you're dealing with life and death type situations. So they handle it well. And one of the things why emotional stability has to be is something that's very important when you're dealing in certain career fields or stressful situations, because if you can be in control of your emotions and provide stability, you can actually help others get grounded. If a leader is running around like their hair is on fire, everybody else is too. But if people are panicking and the leader is calm and tells them and they follow the leader, well, they'll follow her because she is actually bringing them out and showing them, hey, this is a bad situation, but you know what? We can get through it. Openness to experience, degree to which a person has a broad range of interests and is imaginative, creative, and willing to consider new ideas. Intellectually curious and seeks new experiences. Early travel and exposure to different ideas and culture are critical to development. Important because leadership is about change. So open to new experiences. You've probably heard this before. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, bottom line is this: when you get to the point where you're not willing to be open and experience new things, and you've stayed too long, it's time to move on. But these leaders are open, and they do look. They always think there's a possibility. They always see, hey, if there's a will, there's a way. And they are creative. Now, I can tell you that these types of leaders can make a leader who's not that way. For instance, if you have a senior leader who's not this way and a mid-level leader who is, that senior level leader will probably not be comfortable with this person because they may not be creative. They may be an introvert, and they wouldn't be imaginative and creative and willing to try new things, and they could view this person as being reckless. Locus of control. Define whether a person places the primary responsibility on what happens to him or her within themselves or outside. So, internal locus of control. Belief that actions determine what happens to them. So this is the people believe that I make things happen. And because of things I do or things I did, I got these results or this happened to me. But at the end of the day, it's a very proactive way of looking at stuff. If I want that big rock to move, then I have to move it. I'm not going to wait for somebody else or whatever else, but they really believe that things happen because of what they do. Now, high external locus of control, the belief is that outside forces determine what happens to them. Well, I could have done better, but because these things happened, I wasn't able to do better. I could have done this. I would have got that position if it wasn't for Matt getting that position, but I should have gotten it. These are the kind of people, I view them as the type of people who make excuses when things go wrong. It's never their fault. It's always something else or somebody else. There's a reason why they didn't do something. Maximizing your leadership effectiveness. Tips for extroverts. So don't bash in the glory of your own personality. Learn to hold back and let others sometimes have the limelight. So these people are really aggressive. So sometimes they have a tendency to go overboard. And it almost looks like they're being braggadocious. They're bragging and they're always jumping out in front. These people have to learn to scale it back some. When you look at the introverts, they have to learn to actually step their game up. They have to be more assertive. They have to learn to speak up. They have to be willing to accept challenges when challenges come. Be willing to get out front periodically and talk about the project that you worked on. You can't just say, well, I can fix it. Now let somebody else talk about it. And also, too, a lot of introverts are very uncomfortable around people. And that's something else that they have to work on. Because these things, look, bottom line is if you're in the workforce, you got to deal with people. Authoritarianism. So this is the belief that power and status differences should exist in the organization. Bottom line is this is somebody who wants to be the king or the queen. The leader's degree of authoritarianism affects how the leader wields and shares power. High authoritarianism. Traditional, rational approach to management. Autocratic style of leadership. Difference between the leader and the follower affects the leader's effectiveness. So these are the people who you think in terms of autocratic type behavior. They're in charge. They like being in charge. They like wielding power, and everything is about power and status with these types of people. The difference between the leader and the follower affects the leader's effectiveness. So when you have the leader, depending upon what they want to get done, how effective they can be, that's going to be determined by the followers. Values. Fundamental beliefs that an individual considers to be important. They are relatively stable over time, and they have an impact on attitudes and behaviors. So when we think in terms of value, I always think in terms of where you grew up, how you were raised, what's your household culture like, what's your family culture like, what's the community culture like, what you grew up, how was your relationship related to religion. All these things help make your values. Most people's values stay with them for a long time, if not forever. Every now and then you see some folks where they may change. So instrumental and end values. Instrumental values, beliefs about the types of behavior that are appropriate for reaching goals. So basically, we believe in the types of things about and do the types of things that can help us do our jobs. Every now and then you may find that a lot of times that's a good thing. Sometimes that can be a bad thing because you took on a behavior to get something done, but it wasn't appropriate behavior. End values, sometimes called terminal values. These are beliefs about the kind of goals or outcomes that are worth trying to pursue. So basically, do the ends justify the means? Is this something, once we get to the end, would it have been worth it? And we have to take a look at that and see, because it may not be. Values, difference, and influences. Individuals differ how they prioritize values. Identify and understand value differences to improve communication and effectiveness. Values are established by early adulthood, but can change. Notice I said, they start when you're little, they can change, they don't change a lot. For leaders, values influence how they relate to others, perceive opportunities, situations, and problems, and make decisions. So when you look at this, particularly the leaders, it's that all your life experiences and your education and all the works determines how you perceive things, how you perceive opportunity, how you relate to things, how you solve problems, how you make decisions. And, that means everybody comes with good and everybody comes with bad. And hopefully when you're doing this type of stuff, the things you're doing is actually primarily good. And the people around you usually will let you know if you have an open door policy, they can talk to you about it. Differences in leaders and non-leaders value ranking. So when we look at here, we see terminal values ranked higher by leaders: freedom, mature love, national security, salvation. Terminal values ranked higher by non-leaders: world peace, pleasure, wisdom. And so instrumental values ranked higher by leaders: ambitious, broad-minded, courageous, forgiving, loyal. And you see that here, instrumental values ranked higher by non-leaders: clean, helpful, independent, intellectual, logical, self-control. And when you know this as a leader and you know about non-leaders, understanding that helps you lead them and understand them better. So attitude and evaluation, either positive or negative, about people, events, and things. So your attitude is something that's subjective. You look at things positive, negative about people, events, and things. The theory X and Y. The X assumption that people are basically lazy and not motivated to work, and that they have a natural tendency to avoid responsibility. So this is a pessimistic view of people. And there are many managers and leaders who believe that. Everybody's suspect, and there's no such thing as me giving autonomy and trusting people, because I know they're lazy and I got to stay on them to get them to do stuff. So realistically, that's my outlook and that's my philosophy and that's how I treat people. Theory Y, assumption that people do not inherently dislike work and will commit themselves willingly to work that they care about. A happy worker is a productive worker, basically, is what it's saying right here. And it's true. If you have somebody who enjoys what they do, not necessarily loves it, but don't hate it, enjoys it or tolerates it, whatever else, they'll care about it and they'll want to do a good job. Attitudes and assumptions of theory X and theory Y. So we look at the assumptions of that, and I won't go through all of these. I'll go to the first ones on the top of each one of them. The average human being has an inherent dislike of work and will avoid it if possible. Talked about that. The expenditure of physical and mental effort in work is as natural as play and rest. The average human being does not inherently dislike work. And I'll be honest with you, the average human being does not dislike for the most part. We look at the ones on the bottom for each other. The average human being on the X, the average human being prefers to be directed, wishes to avoid responsibility and relatively little ambition, and wants security above all. Again, this is kind of somebody who's lazy, takes no initiative, and that's the belief that this is how I view people. Under Y, under the conditions of modern industrial life, the intellectual possibilities of the average human being are only partially utilized. Basically, we haven't tapped all the resources when it comes to the capabilities of the human brain and the human body. We can do more. Perception. Process people use to make sense out of the environment by selecting, organizing, and interpreting information. Perceptual defense. Errors in judgment that arise from inaccuracies in the perceptual process. So you can't make a good decision from bad perception or wrong judgment. If it's flawed and it's inaccurate, no good decision comes from bad data, partial data, or errors. So obviously, when you think in terms of that makes sense. Stereotyping, tendency to assign an individual to a broad category and then attribute generalizations about that group to the individual. So this is basically you having predisposed to somebody and stereotyping them and putting them in a category with a group of people, and versus look at them as an individual and seeing them for who they are, not for what you think they may be. Halo effect, overall impression of a person or situation based on one characteristic, either favorable or unfavorable. So a lot of times when I hear the halo, it's usually you meet somebody or you think of somebody who actually, let's say that they have 5 things they're supposed to do. Well, 3 of them they're not that good at, and 1 is all right, and 1 they're great at. So you look at the one that they're great at, the halo effect. Overall impression of a person's situation based on one characteristic, one thing. Yeah, but the other things are not that good. Projection, tendency to see one's own personal traits in other people. This is something that is I think is more common than what people think. I think it's been proven statistically that people are more comfortable with people who are more like them, and I don't mean same race and same gender and all this other stuff. Now that could be factored in, that could be considered stuff too, but particularly personal traits and stuff. And so one of the problems you have to be careful of is showing favoritism to people who have traits similar to you, being partial to applicants when you in the hiring process who may have some traits similar to you. Perceptual defense, tendency to protect oneself by disregarding ideas, situations, or people that are unpleasant. So yeah, perceptual defense, it's I don't like bad news. I don't like bad situation or whatever, or unpleasant people. So I avoid it. The problem is when you start cutting off that people and ideas and situations, there are things that you're not learning and you don't hear and you don't understand. And so here again, your perception defense, your defense is keeping you away from potentially understanding and learning something about some people, situation, or something related to your organization. Attributions, judgments about what caused a person's behavior, either characteristics of the person or the situation. So when you think in terms of attribution, judgments about person's behavior, you're trying to figure out what caused them to do that. What is it? Is it because that the reason he did it? Is it because of his religion? I mean, what? You're trying to figure out of the person or the situation. Internal attribution, characteristics of the person led to behavior. So basically, this is why some careers require people to have high moral character, because they're going to be put in positions and stuff where if they didn't, they could get in a lot of trouble. For instance, police officers. A lot of organizations, police officers would they have a law enforcement period, has a screening process to screen and wash out certain types of people and stuff, because it wouldn't be good for them to be in law enforcement. External attribution, situation caused the person's behavior. So there are some people they get triggered by certain things, even though they don't realize it, but they get triggered by it. So whenever I see this is what I tell those kind of people. You don't control situations, situations control you. And that's something that you're going to work on. How we judge behavior. So we got fundamental attribution error, and we got self-serving bias. So let's look at attribution for mistakes and failures under fundamental, for others, personal qualities, and for ourselves. You see attribution for mistakes and failures, personal qualities, situation. And when you look at it, it's like it's And you look at that when you look at the attribution for success. Very similar. Well, they are actually very similar, but we're talking about two different things: self-serving bias and versus fundamental attribution error. These are two totally different things, even though the graphs are very similar. The tendency to understand the influence of external factors on another's behavior and overestimate the influence of internal factors. So when someone has looked at the underestimate the influence of external factors, the things that might be affecting you externally, you have a tendency to underestimate those and give too much credence to internal stuff that could be going on in your life or at work. And realistically, that's an error, because you may actually external things may actually be affecting you in different ways, more so than you're willing to acknowledge, but you're willing to downplay that because you think it's internal factors. The tendency to overestimate the influence of internal factors on one's successes and the influence of external factors on one's failures. So the tendency to overestimate the influence of internal factors. So realistically, we look at it and say, we're giving too much credence to internal factors of, getting coached by my boss and getting mentored or whatever else. It may have helped you a little bit. And then the influence of external factors on one's failures. And the lack that I didn't have these external factors is why I failed. It's just flawed logic. But it's self-serving because it's justification for the failures. Cognitive style: how a person perceives, processes, interprets, and uses information. So this is you have a lot of tests that people go through for certain career fields, particularly when it comes to the government and intelligence and things along those lines. Cognitive tests are the kind of things that you want to look at to see how do people think, their perceptions, their process, interpret, and how do they use that information. You could put 10 people together and give them a scenario and have them all read it and tell you what they think about it, and you would get probably get 10 different answers. But you will be getting this based on their cognitive style, their perceptions and their process, their interprets, and how they would use the information. Patterns of thinking. So when we're talking about the brain now, we're talking about the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain. The left is logical, analytical thinking and linear approach to problem solving. The right is creative, intuitive, values-based, and thought process. So the whole brain is an approach that considers that not only a person's preference for right brain versus left brain thinking, but also conceptual versus experiential thinking, identifies 4 quadrants of the brain related to different thinking styles. And we'll take a look at that now. So when we look at the brain now, we look at the upper left. We see logical, analytical, fact-based, quantitative, and right is holistic, intuitive, and integrating, synthesizing, interpersonal, feeling-based, kinetics, emotional, organized, sequential, planning, detail. So when you see somebody and they're very, let's just say, very strong with tech stuff and very logical and very quantitative but good with numbers and stuff, then it's that left part of the brain that they're very strong. And their left upper brain is their dominant there on the left hemisphere at the front. And if you see somebody who really, we refer to as like a touchy-feely kind of person, emotional, really cares about a lot of people, very sensitive, and will make a good social worker, a good teacher, because they're going to be they're going to be down here in the lower right part of the brain. So as you can see, this is how you can see some people, why they're the way they are, because they have a dominant part of their brain. So we have the Myers-Briggs. And this test measures how individuals differ in gathering and evaluating information for solving problems and making decisions. This is one of the personality tests that they give out here now for, particularly in corporate America, for potentially hiring people or promoting people. It uses different pairs of attributes to classify people in one of 16 different personality types: introversion versus extroversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, judging versus perception. Guidelines for working with different personalities. Understand your own personality and how you react to others. This is a must. You must understand your own personality first before you can deal with others. You'll hear this term at some point, if you hadn't heard already, eventually, emotional intelligence. And that's what that's really talking about, is understanding your own feelings, thoughts, and emotions before you deal with other people's feelings, thoughts, and emotions. Treat people with respect. Bottom line is this: you give them the respect that you would like them to give you. Acknowledge each person's strengths. Everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. Play into that and acknowledge that, and play to their strengths. Assign them things when you can as a leader that plays into the strengths, not their weaknesses. Strive for understanding. Make sure everybody understands, what we do, why we do it, and the works. When people understand, one of the things that helps them understand is having a good culture where they're not afraid to ask questions. Remember that everyone wants to fit in. Most people want to fit in. They do. And they want to work with you and want to be part of the team or whatever else. You have to find ways as a leader to make it happen. So in wrapping up, we talked about all these different things when it comes to understanding the individual leader, the different types of leader, the type of leadership styles, understanding the left, the right brain, and the cognitive differences, personality assessments and stuff. If you've never taken a personality assessment, the Myers-Briggs is a good one. The DISC, DISCS, is another good one that you could take. That concludes this chapter.